to this kid. Well, hello. Welcome to the very first Poetricity Live for 2026. Gosh, where is the years going?
Mhm.
Um, Last year, almost as if we planned it, we neatly finished the love framework. And believe it or not, this year we are kicking off with the grief framework. And I know people might think, grief? Yes, grief, because actually, it's an interesting one to follow love, as we're going to find out much later on in the series. The amount of grief we experience when things change or are no longer the same is connected to how much we loved that, which is the object of our grief. So there is some sort of connection there, and really, this framework, is something that I've been talking to people about, maybe more than the other ones, really, to say I'm thinking of doing this, and pretty much everybody I've spoken says, yeah, there's something they can relate to in this issue of this subject of grief. And as you'll find out, and I'm going to hope that we'll establish that foundation today, grief is not just someone died. Grief is applicable in more than that. And as we'll discover, if I just run through quickly what the grief framework is, the G stands for grief is a response to change. The R is to recognize that process of grief. The I is to integrate that wisdom that is available to us from the process of grief. And the E is to embrace the new identity that we need to kind of evolve into once we come to terms with that grief and what we have lost and what that means to who we are and how we see ourselves. And the F is finding purpose in our grief so that the grief that we've gone through, we don't go through it in vain, but we learn and use that for our future. So this is what we'll cover. I don't know how many months it's going to take us to cover it. It may take the whole year. Who knows? We'll see. But we're going to start that journey. And really, actually, Claudia, I'd like to ask you that quick question. For you, if someone asked you to define what grief is, what would you say?
Um, I would say if somebody else knew what grief was like a year ago, I
Yeah.
would said grief. I would probably say something connected to death. I would probably give an answer to
Right.
do with death.
Right.
But because of all the different um things I've been exposed to through poetry,
Yeah.
I would say today I can say that grief is about because I didn't see grief change had anything to do with grief. I couldn't make the connection.
Right.
But from our last conversation, from when you said to me about grief and everything, I started to feel grief is more than death. So I can see where the other frameworks have kind of
Mhm.
awakened a broader perspective of what grief is, what it means to me now.
I love that. I love that. Hi, Herbert. Yeah, no, I like that. And there's a piece that we're going to come to right probably towards the end that opened my eyes to that as well. So I found that out and that inspired me actually to create the grief framework. And I'd like to give a shout out to Kim Morgan because where I did my coaching training, she's the founder. And I was poet in residence at their conference this year, and she did a section on on that. Uh, and it just opened my eyes to so many things. And I will share the piece that came out of that session because that was what my role was to listen and then create poetry based on what was being said. Um, so Ian, are you okay to speak where you are now, or are you just being silent listener?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good, good, good. So I was just asking Claudette, what's her definition of grief? What's your go? If someone asked you what is grief, what would you say?
I would say it's it's an expression, it's an external expression
Hmm.
of what you're currently feeling and going through. It's your way of um, saying it out loudly or showing it in terms of action so someone else can understand probably just a little bit of what you might be experiencing.
I hear that. I hear that. So well, your definition is falling on the side of how grief shows up, how it manifests.
Yes.
Uh, I love that. I love that. Okay. That's a good foundation to start with. Let me put the first piece in the I notice we're joined by uh, Ebony, which I assume is Irene. We're also joined by Biro, who I don't actually know who that is. So if you don't mind going off mute and just introducing yourself, that would be great. Um, okay, so let me put this piece in here and then I'll read it. Right, this piece is called Ripe. All of nature is in a cycle of life, death, and rebirth, each caught and interacted within the continuum of time. So ripe is a stop on the way to decay. I'll read that again, ripe. All of nature is in a cycle of life, death, and rebirth, each caught and interacted within the continuum of time. So ripe is a stop on the way to decay. What are you hearing?
Um,
Yeah, go on.
yeah, I was thinking, this is talking about grief as it's a natural part of life. It's
Mm,
not an add-on. It's
mm,
something that naturally flows. It's something that happens to every living thing, I suppose.
I love that. That's almost poetic the way you said that. Yeah. Herbert, what are you thinking?
Mm. I'm thinking about ripe East Indian mango in Jamaica. Ah, I'm just thinking about the aspect of it that it is in passing because when someone grieves,
Mm,
it's funny because you may have lost a loved one and you grieve, and someone will see you a month or 2 months from that at a party in a total different sphere, and the grief, you'd wonder what happened to the grief.
mm,
So it is you giving that space, giving yourself the space
mm.
to express the feeling of loss.
Yeah, I like that. That feeling of loss. And again, you see, you're coming into this conversation on the other side of where we are, which is kind of like when you begin to process that grief, when you begin and what I hear you say there is that expression, that allowing it to come out is an important piece, which we will definitely we've got a few pieces maybe in the next one to talk about that. Yeah, but you are right. It's and that's the irony of it, right? The more you stifle it, the longer it takes, basically. And again, we'll come to that. Um, what's really interesting in this piece is going back to something Claudette said about there's a natural cycle here,
Mm,
and that when we look at nature, and we will have some references to nature when we did in the whole series, because nature teaches us really about this. Because I think we human beings we have a different expectation of life, and that impacts how we grieve.
mm,
Uh, and that's why I felt it's important to start with this idea of let's normalize the
mhm,
process that we're grieving. And that idea is that actually life itself is on the way to death, and death is on the way to life, and there's a cycle here. And nature has learned to recycle and reuse. And when we come to talk about this stifling as well, we'll talk about this idea of emotion being energy in motion, and also this
mm,
idea that if you don't allow that energy to express, it will
Yeah.
bounce around and create all sorts of
Yeah.
dynamics until you allow it to evolve into a different
Yeah.
state.
I love that, Frank, because I remember, and while this may not have been grief, but
Mm,
it's similar
hmm.
because I remember a young lady was going to work one morning and she was held up and she was assaulted.
Oh,
She went home, took a shower, and just went back to work, told no one. And 2 weeks after that, she was in the canteen having her lunch. She just started screaming.
mm,
And that was when the whole thing started to come out and the flow, which she stopped up, this. And I understand because
mm,
in her mind, she's saying, I am not going to give you the benefit or the power over me to stop
mm,
my life and whatever. And that has a part.
mm,
But by doing that, the natural thing that the human body do want to do is to express the sadness. I am not giving him that person I'm not giving him that joy or whatever. And she just held it. And I'm like, wow, 2 weeks and you just, I mean, so when you spoke about giving yourself that, it's natural.
and that is the point of this piece. Nature. Let's learn from nature. Let's look at nature and understand that loss or change is part of it, right? And I love what you said there, Ian, is that idea that if you don't allow it to process, it's trying to process for a reason. That's the design. And the design is for our good, that we need to let it out. When we release it, then we can continue to learn what we can from it and continue to live our lives. It doesn't stop that, but it's something that needs to go. So I think that's probably one of the first things we're kind of bringing ourselves into here is that, okay, loss and change is natural. There's a natural cause and let it be. I think is kind of where we are on this one. Anything else before we move to the next piece?
Oh, a question.
Yes, my dear.
Just thinking about what Ian has just said and everything. I was just he was saying to me how that connection between grief and trauma,
Okay.
Right. It's
where
in
where
very,
something horrible can happen, and the
yeah,
way we internalize that.
yeah.
Mm,
Sometimes it cannot. That is the trauma. Maybe the shock sometimes
Mm,
delays the response,
mm,
and you can have delayed grief,
mm,
or you can have delayed changes to something that happened to you months ago, weeks ago,
mm.
days ago.
no, that's a good one. That's a good one. So that's the other side of what Herbert was saying there. That Herbert was saying that potentially it looks like that person made a conscious decision not to allow that to come out. What you are positioning here is that actually sometimes it may feel like nothing's there to come out until later. And then
Mm.
all of a sudden those responses start to happen. And sometimes it takes people a while to make the connection that, oh, this is happening because of
Yeah.
something that happened. The direct question you asked, the relationship between trauma and grief. Well, if we think about trauma has to do with something that impacted on you that
Mm.
was not expected and not helpful,
Yeah.
right? Now, that is something that has created change in your life, right? And it's a change that for you is not desirable.
Mm.
Therefore, that is going to have grief of some
Mm.
description.
Yeah.
Because when we define grief as the process of change,
Mm.
something that happens that
Yes.
means that things cannot be the same again, right? That's the whole idea. And later on, we'll talk about this idea of the impact it has on your identity.
Mhm.
And that is the bit that really kicks in the grief process because you it feels like you cannot see yourself as the same person again because that thing has happened to you.
Yeah.
So it's what how do you then reframe your relationship to that, right? So those are some of the elements there. Is that helpful? Did you have any other comments on that, Claudette?
No, no, that's very helpful. That's
Okay.
very
And
helpful.
at the end of that, I'd also like to add,
Yeah.
because sometimes persons will be of the impression that, I mean, it has been 5 years. Come on, man, get over that.
Mm,
Listen, my mother died 2006 and my father died almost a year to the T, 2007.
mm,
And because of my mother died on Mother's Days, and Mother's Days are just not the same. Every time the year comes for that day, it's just so painful. It's almost as if you have gone and you have dug into the sore again and it feels fresh again. And you wonder, I mean, it has been so many years and yet still, it's just how you manage it, really.
Thank you so much for that. And again, these are things we're going to really spend time looking at. This idea of what is the process of it? What can we expect? And based on our expectation, we determine how we treat ourselves when those things are happening. Also, we're going to talk about when people come alongside you and try and support you, what will be helpful. Because some of the things people might go is, oh, but you should have got over it by now, or
Yeah.
this was so long ago, or they start
Yeah.
trying to tell you things because they don't want you to feel what you're feeling, right? And
Mhm.
and we'll talk about whether is it more helpful to just feel what you're feeling and be with it and be kind to yourself in it, or start kicking yourself. And there's a piece we're going to cover called self-brutality, where we talk about that element of trying to kick yourself out of it and stuff. Is that helpful? So thank you so much for that. Yes, so those are those kind of things, and that's why we need to talk about grief. We need to talk about all these things because when you look at the expanded definition of change, you begin to understand if grief is processing change, then who doesn't experience it? And let me read this piece and you see what I mean. This is called winds of change. Rarely can things remain the same. When the winds of change blows, ruffling all that's somewhat loose, leaving all that's sure to abide. Oh, that shifting, sifting wind of change. I'll read that again. Winds of change. Rarely can things remain the same. When the winds of change blows, ruffling all that's somewhat loose, leaving all that's sure to abide. Oh, that shifting, sifting wind of change.
The shifting and the sifting is inevitable.
Say more.
How do you prepare for this inevitability is another story.
Here's another stuff. Well, hopefully we'll get into those. But yes, I
Because
hear you.
I'm seeing where if you have your grandma who has
Hmm.
been ill for a number of years, and the doctor is saying to you that, listen, I think by virtue of what my analysis is showing me, she may have another year.
Mm.
So it's almost as if you would have prepared for it versus just an instantaneous hit by a car. It's two different. Yes, it's still one you're kind of prepared for. Sorry, I
Yeah.
need to just respond to the door.
Yeah, sure. While we're waiting for Herbert to come back, anything from you on this?
Oh, sorry, who were you asking me?
Yeah, you.
Oh,
Yeah, Herbert.
so I was another plate. Oh, I was just thinking, this to me sounds like grief is not something where we can actually control.
Yeah,
I think there's an element of something that's outside our control. That's
yeah.
the way I see with this. When I talk about the wind, the way the wind blows and what it can do and the change shifting is changing. It's not something you can hold on to. It's not something that you can say, here it is, because it's movement, it's fluid.
I love that. Yeah. No, I hear that.
So I'm not sure if you know what I mean. And pe people, as people, we like to have things, we like to control things. And when we can't control things, sometimes in our effort to control things, we make things worse for ourselves.
Wow, I hear that. I hear that. And that's the beauty of the what we're doing now is we're setting expectation. We're saying life, death, and everything is in the same cycle. So just begin to think that way. We're now saying, okay, if grief is processing change, change is inevitable. It's always happening. And so begin to adjust your relationship to the idea of change. And I love what you said there. We live in the illusion of control that somehow we can keep things the same. But actually, things are not the same. The mind just makes them look like they're the same. I'm saying you never step in the same river twice, right? You never live the same moment twice. Do you see what I'm saying? Everything, it may look like everything around us right now is the same, but is it really? The air is probably recycled a bit. Do you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
there is this element that change is always happening. And the sooner we come to terms with that fact, and the fact that there are certain changes that would initiate grieving processes, then we begin to at least prepare ourselves better, which speaks to something that Ian put on the table, which I'm gonna try and wait for him to come back before I go into that side of things. What else are you seeing here? Especially when you think about the metaphor of winds that I've used for change here. What do you think is happening there with that? When you lean into the metaphor of wind as a means of communicating change.
Well, I was thinking of, well, when I think of the wind, that's it. The wind to me it can be quite quiet, silent,
Hmm.
that you don't always hear it.
Ah, I love that.
That you don't always hear it. And sometimes I suppose it's a bit like something happening to you unexpectedly.
Right. I hear that.
So sometimes you could have a feeling or something and you don't know, you weren't expecting that feeling.
Hmm.
You woke up in the morning and you just got that feeling. And it could be that at that time some wind of change is blowing through your experiences and you're just catching a feeling of it at that moment in time.
Yeah. No, I hear that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Herbert, you were we were talking, just waiting for you to come back. Do you remember what you were saying? I don't think you.
The, the engineers are here, so I had to the conversation with the engineer a while ago. Just that was engineering.
No, no,
I'm
I get that.
recalibrating now.
One of the things you were talking about was that there's a difference between change that comes expected because someone's giving you notice to prepare for it, and change that happens that you're not expecting. And again, that's something is almost like your brain is on fast forward to where we're going, Ian, because you're hitting lots of the things you will be coming to. And one of the things I when I was preparing this was this idea that some of the things that impact the level of grief we experience has to do with this idea of how much control you felt you had, right? And that thing of preparing for something is about that control and having the processing happen at a slower pace. When something comes suddenly, there's an intensity with which it hits you. Then there's something around this idea of immediacy. If it happens, it's recently just happened, as opposed to it's happened a long time ago. That also has an impact on the intensity. Another part of it is this idea of how connected, how emotionally connected were you to the thing that is no longer here, right? It doesn't have to be a person, it could be a job, it could be a role, it could be different things, right? But it's like how so all these things have an impact, right? And again, we will get to really explore that. But the question I was asking Claudette, sorry, earlier was this idea of when you think about the metaphor of wind, being a way of communicating change. Like what happened and what Claudette was talking about is that there's something about wind can be silent and you only see it once it's hit. Like,
Yeah.
oh, what happened there? The other thing I was really trying to look after, and that's what the sifting element of it is that sometimes change, that wind of change comes, and this is something we're going to talk about later, to reveal to you something about that object of loss or change, right? So it's the idea that maybe something wasn't as grounded as you thought it was. When the wind of change comes through, it blows it and you see it moving away because you thought it was rooted and grounded. But when the winds of change came, it
Yeah.
tested it
Yes.
and you discovered that, oh, wait, this thing is not as solid as I thought it was. This thing is not as, yeah, I can't build my foundation on this because this wind has come to show me that this thing is not a solid foundation. Does that make sense?
Um,
Mhm.
and there are two aspects of sifting.
Yeah, go on.
In construction, when we
Mm,
sift the sand,
mm,
we are sifting out pebbles and particles that we don't want that is thrown away.
mm.
But yet still, there are some things that we sift out the finer particles and what's left that is actually the value. So it's like there are two separate things happening. Am I sifting out the fine particles that have no use and leaving the solid stuff that are useful, or am I sifting out the fine?
I
So
like that. I
whatever it
like that.
happens,
Yeah, it's a good thing. But so here's what's common to both of those scenarios. You are getting clarity as
yeah.
to what the separate things are, and you get to choose which one you want to keep and which one is not serving you. So that's brilliant, actually. Right. Okay. Anything else on that before I put the next piece in? Okay, let's go for this one then. This is called Life and Death. You can't multiply if you don't first die. Fear of
Okay,
death
thank you. I'll do it.
stifles the
Come
ability
on.
to live.
Okay, all right, thank you. Cool. Mhm.
Death, the doorway to life. So I'm going to read that again. Life and death. You can't multiply if you don't first die. Fear of death stifles the ability to live. Death, the doorway to life.
Hmm. It's interesting that when you say death
Mm-hmm.
is the doorway to life,
Mm,
there are so many thoughts popping in my head right now that I remember there is a popular thing that we say in Jamaica.
mm.
They buried me not knowing I was a seed.
I love that.
Oh.
I love that.
So it's the
And that,
same thing, in that
yeah,
death comes,
yeah.
but it's not the finality of the situation, but yet still and I think we die daily to several things, and in dying, the new person springs forth almost like the phoenix, stronger, better. The eagle, all feathers are plucked out, which is very painful. The beak is beaten up and dull, and he goes to the cliff and hides himself because he's vulnerable.
Mm,
But yet, still, when that process of death almost
mm,
passes, the feathers are coming out stronger than before. The
mm,
beak is sharper than it has ever been. And here he spreads his wings and jump out of the side of that cliff. And he's in his peak and in his prime at that moment.
I love it. I just love it sometimes when you just say those things, Herbert. It just makes me so happy to hear stuff like that.
Yeah.
And what you alluded to from your first part of your statement was the first two lines. You can't multiply if you don't first die. That's the journey of a seed.
Mm,
You put it into the ground, it has to die first,
yes.
and then it comes alive. And again, it's just us trying to reframe what we see death as because we're so afraid of it. But we fail to see it as a continuum of life. Death to us is always seems rather final. Okay, maybe death as you are in this form might feel final, but again, don't forget the context here is change, right? And like you're rightfully, I love what you said there. It might be your old identity that has to die in order for a new identity to come up. Like I used to be a people pleaser. Then that identity needs to die for a new person who is not a people pleaser to show up and start being in the world. So, yeah. And so the fear of death stifles the ability to live, right? Because then you start holding back, not trusting that life has you and can hold you. Um, yeah. Claudia, anything from you on this one?
This poem reminds me of Jesus.
Uh-huh. Say more.
You know, especially the last line, "Death, the doorway to life."
Mm.
That just reminds me of of Christ being crucified,
Mm-hmm.
and through his death we live.
Yeah.
Right. So that there's an exchange there in that, and if you watch nature, and there's a piece I've got, which maybe later on when we start looking at what nature can teach us about grieving and death, it's this idea that actually when you observe, you go in nature and observe, you will see that when something dies, it never gets wasted. It creates opportunity for something else to live. So that's how nature is designed. It's like nothing is lost. It just feels like it's
Yeah.
lost. It's gone on and transformed to a different way to add to the energy of life. So I'm trying to encourage us to see hope in death, for
Yeah.
us to see life in death, so that we're not afraid of death and we accept it as part of the cycle of life. But that really is what these pieces are about. Anything else coming up on that?
I'm thinking about the seeing that you speak about.
Mm,
And there's a particular verse that pops in my head immediately when you speak about
mm,
seeing,
mm,
where in Isaiah it says, "In the year that King Uzziah died, I
mm,
saw." I don't ever go any further. I saw.
mhm,
And I'm
mhm.
wondering, what is it that had stopped him from seeing before King Uzziah died? And I'm thinking, in many persons, I personally know of that their parents has died, their grandma has died, and all of
Mm.
a sudden, this um non-structured schooling that of thought and principles that they have been teaching all of a sudden that becomes alive. Grandma used to say, and all these things.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And that is so personal to me, actually,
Mm.
because my grandmother, it was the same with her. With like she died 30 years ago. We're still talking about the things she used to say, how she used to be. And really, when I went through my time where I was almost bankrupt and started reflecting on how I'd managed to create that in my life, the person I looked to, the person's life who I looked to, and that's why I dedicated my book to her, was her life, and say, oh, I'm trying to be rich and do all these things so I can do good in the world. Well, she wasn't that rich and she did a lot of good in the world. How did she do it? Right. So then I thought, oh, well, what gifts do I have? I have poetry, I have coaching people, bring it together. So that led to the book. The book led to this podcast. So you could actually say, in some ways, she's responsible for all of this. But you're right. While she was praying for us and going to church on our behalf and whatever, we didn't really bother about our Christian walk. It was only after that, it's kind of like, well, she's not here anymore. Maybe we should take this seriously. Maybe we should start doing. So you are right. There's so much that can be released from death that it's not all just negative of someone's lost and the world is over and everything else. So again, this is what we're trying to condition and begin to help ourselves to see so that we can relate to loss, change in a different way. Thank you
One of the
very much.
things I've learned over the years is when I was young, I think it was just ignorance, probably even arrogance. I just thought that when people were going through grief, it was a time for me to go and sit with them and encourage and whatever. And more than anything now, when these things happen, I will go to the home and I sit and say nothing.
You're doing it again, Ian. That's another bit we're going to get to later. Actually have a piece actually have a piece called suffering, and what you just described is pretty much what it's talking about, but we're not going to get to that now. Maybe next season we'll bring that
I'm
in.
so sorry, Frank.
No, that's all right, but no, but what does it show? It shows that these things we're going to look at are relevant, right? If you
Yeah.
are bringing them up here, it shows that they're relevant and we should be talking about it. because and let's not be harsh on those people. They're trying to be helpful, but
Yes.
because we all don't talk about this enough, people don't know what's helpful or what not helpful.
Mhm.
And we as Christians are particularly bad at sitting with discomfort and sitting with things that look like they're not going right. We can
Mhm.
feel like it's our job to pump people up with faith, and they shouldn't feel
Yeah.
sad and they shouldn't
Mhm.
experience this, and because that would be unbelief and all that. So there's a lot of baggage you carry from a Christian perspective that
Mhm.
stifles the natural process of grieving.
Mhm.
So it's important for us to talk about these things. And yeah, it talks about this suffering and people being able to. So we're really going to do a whole section talking about what's the best way to support somebody. What is it that makes us want to? Is it our own discomfort
Mhm.
with grief that means we want to try and cheer people up when they're processing and things like that? Um, okay, let me put this next piece in. This one is called grief, so we're starting to name it now. Grief. How did it show up for you? I know how it did for me. Stopped questioning if this is right for them. I know it's right for me, even if it hurts. I'm going to read that again. Grief. Grief. How did it show up for you? I know how it did for me. Stopped questioning if this is right for them.
Mhm.
I know it's right for me, even if it hurts.
Mhm.
This makes me think that we all experience grief in different ways,
Mm,
and no two people experience grief in quite the same way. And sometimes we have to realize that, especially when we are supporting other people, we
Mhm.
need to be very sensitive and
Yeah.
mindful
Yeah.
to the fact that they are grieving. But we might have we experienced grief as well, but it's not the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have to be mindful how we of what kind of
Yeah.
support we offer or how we manage their grief
Yeah.
as they share it with us.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
love
love
that.
that. I love that, Claudette, because while you're speaking, I am just reflecting on many funerals that I've been to in Jamaica, where while most of us are standing by having a conversation about the person, their life, we have people literally wailing, not even bawling, wailing. Some of
Mm,
them jumping on the literally on the coffin.
yeah.
And it's two different scenarios. We equally miss them. It's not that one misses them more than the other, but our expression of grief. So while somebody, I like what you said, let's be careful how we look at what the other person is expressing. Because in that very scenario, I remember people saying, why is she being so extra? But that is
Mm,
just being insensitive. That's her, allow her to express how she feels. Yes, you may not be wailing, but you're still hurting. But allow that person to express what they feel. If that's how she wants to express herself, then so be it.
no, I hear that. I hear that. Yeah. Yeah. And we do have different relationships to whatever the object of the loss is, right?
Yeah.
And then we are different human beings within ourselves as well. We have different levels of sensitivity,
Mhm.
different levels, and then different people have, yeah, just different. And it's embracing that difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes what I see happen is the expression will come. We all have the ability to have that same expression, but for some persons, because of different reasons, because I remember persons having loss,
Mm,
and in a crowd, you can see them holding it together.
hmm
And when we, said, all right, let's say let's take a break and then let's sit in the car and have a talk. And
mm.
before the person reach in the car, I mean, you don't have enough tissue to. So sometimes, and I understand. I remember one young lady, one not young lady, one female said she don't like crying in crowd because when she cry, she look ugly. So you may have one of
Interesting.
these little things that seem insignificant, but yes, it's not that I am not hurting, but that is important to me facially how I am. I mean, it sounds crazy, but it is what it is.
It is what it is, right? And that's the point we're making here. This is what it is, and not to make people wrong.
Mhm,
And in fact, one of the lines I was writing when I was preparing this was, grief is happening.
mhm.
We can't do grief wrong, really,
Yeah.
because grief is happening. There are ways we can be with grief that it helps us and is more supportive. Later on in the series, we'll talk about what is called second arrow, that there are thoughts that we can have about grief that mean that we intensify what grief is, or we
Mhm,
make grief do or be even feel worse than it actually is because of the way we're thinking about it. So we'll come to those elements further down the journey. But today is just really about positioning the different things we'll be looking at, helping us
mhm,
normalize the fact that grief happens. And what we're now talking about is accepting that grief happens for people in different ways,
mhm,
and to make room and space for that. And one of the threads of all we're talking about here is this idea that if you are the person supporting someone else in grief, these are all things that is good to know, because then it informs how you're showing up in that space, so that your support is exactly that support and not making things worse.
mhm. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Grief is one other thing I also thought of a while ago is grief. Grief is I'm trying to find the word. There's a word. It's it's not epidemic. If you have a cold and give somebody the cold, what you call that, Frank?
Contagious.
Yeah, grief is can be contagious
Mm,
because I've been in spaces where I can't even explain how. I am there not because I knew the person, but a friend of mine that has lost a dear person, and
mm,
they're there really broken. And for some strange reason, I am not bawling, but I'm tears just running down my face.
mm.
Just seeing the person in such a broken state, I like in my mind, part of me saying, you don't know the person what, but it's not, I don't have any control over it really. And I think some parts of it maybe empathy and compassion just being expressed in that way.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. But
Yeah.
what most people don't also know is we have something called mirror neurons.
Okay.
And what those do is that it actually, when we're faced with someone who's going through an expression of emotion, those mirror neurons begin to fire in us, and
Okay.
we begin to mirror to some extent that emotion that the person has. So, and you're right, that is the basis for empathy. That is that is the mechanism through which we can experience empathy, and through we can be emotionally intelligent in the
Mhm.
space with people, because we have the ability to experience what they're experiencing, and if we're not experiencing, we can imagine what it's like to
Mhm.
experience. So that's probably part of that, and that's again for us not to stifle that, but to
Mhm.
let it be,
Oh,
because again that does something in the space to the energy of how that person feels
yeah.
supported and seen in what they are going through. And
Yeah.
if you remember that when the Bible it says, "Rejoice with them that rejoice and weep with
Yes.
those that weep."
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's that element there as well. Um, Claudette, it sounds like you're going to say something, my dear.
No, no, no. I'm just in deep thought.
Okay. I am glad that this subject is generating deep thought. Right. This piece is called Becoming. Are you ready, or will you still hold on? Hanging on for dear life, for what appears to be blocking the very passageway for what you could become. I'm going to read that again. Are you ready, or will you still hold on? Hanging on for their life to what appears to be blocking the very passageway for what you could become.
Hmm. A couple of things.
There you go.
First, I had this feeling, it's like resistance to change.
I
Mm,
hear that.
And the other thing that came up for me was not letting go
Hmm.
of something that's no longer serves its purpose.
I hear
mm,
you.
And I think sometimes we do that when we don't want to change, when we're in a position when change is starting to happen, we don't want to change. So we try to hang on to the remnants of what we're used to because we're used to being familiar with the
mm,
person or the thing,
Yeah.
and we're hanging on to that. And because we're hanging on that to that, we're stifling, we block our own way
Mm.
mm,
of maybe progressing or what might be waiting for us on the other side
mm,
of the grieving process,
I love
the
that.
letting go process.
Mm. I hear that. Yeah, that's so lovely.
mm.
Ian, did you have
I'm,
anything to add to that?
yeah, I'm seeing in the midst of all of that is a measure of selfishness
Okay, say more.
where and in this sense, I'm speaking about someone passing on,
Mm.
where what they're going through, the level of pain and agony they are going through is unimaginable. And
Mm.
many persons probably will never live to understand that gravity.
Hmm.
But your love for the person seem as if it supersedes whatever pain and hell they are going through while they're almost praying and begging for death to take them. But yet still you're praying, Lord, let them live while the person is saying, God, I'm ready.
Hmm.
I hear that. I did wonder what context the selfish came into, but now I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. So in the context of people dying, sometimes the people themselves have kind of went, actually, yeah, maybe I'm ready to go. But you want them around, so you keep holding on. And this is what I love what the Bible talks about prayer of agreement. There should be an agreement in the prayer. You should be praying for one thing, and then the other person is praying for something else. And really, yeah, it's an invitation to think, who are you really thinking about here? Because I want to challenge something you said there, and not in a nasty way, but in a nice way, is to say, actually, are you really loving them if they want
Mm,
to go and you want them for your own
mm,
benefit to stay behind? So it's kind of like loving them
for you.
is about them.
Oh, mm,
But going back to something that Claudette said earlier about are you ready or will this whole idea of resisting change, that there's something about the brain and the mind, and this is why my coaching focuses on helping people see that you're not your mind, because
mm,
once you can step back and see how the mind
yes.
operates, you begin to understand these things a bit better. One of them is the fact that your mind deals on recency, the known. So as far as your brain is concerned, its job is to keep you safe. Doesn't
Mhm,
care about making you happy. It wants to keep
mhm.
you safe.
Give it up.
So to it, what is known is safe. What
Mm,
is unknown
it's
is
unsafe.
potentially not
Yeah,
safe.
unsafe.
So
Yes.
so so it's going to say, this we know, even though it's dysfunctional, not serving you, whatever, 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 but we know it. If
Yes.
we leave that, we don't know what we're going to get,
Mhm.
right? We're not sure because it's unknown and it could be worse. So why would we want to? So we'll rather stick with what's dysfunctional, no longer serving you, that life is already signaling needs to change, because we're just afraid
Mhm.
of that unknown. So
Yeah.
so it's the invitation is to say that this new identity that you're going to have to adopt because of what is no longer there, are you going to trust that that is going to open up more to you in
Yes.
terms of your purpose and impact in the world, and your enjoyment of the world as well? It's not
Mhm.
just about
Yeah.
impacting other people, it's
Yeah.
about your enjoyment of it. So
Hmm.
yeah.
My mind jumps immediately to someone I knew back in Jamaica who
Hmm.
it's a couple and the husband was quite wealthy
Hmm.
and all she did was just live
Hmm.
because everything was taken care of. They had helpers and when I thought of that a while ago, the thought came to mind. She wanted him to live because she has never paid a light bill, she has never paid a water bill, she has never paid a zero.
Hmm.
And to her, it was just for him to leave would have been a whole mountain tumbling on her that she just wasn't prepared to manage.
I hear that. I hear that. And the interesting thing is that what that person could become once they're put in a position where they have to is that they will develop the muscles, the skills, the abilities. You see what I'm saying? They will develop those things. But yeah, we just don't like that. Here's the other thing that we don't recognize sometimes is actually the thing that we're now comfortable with, the thing that we now know was once unknown. We once didn't know those things. We had to go through the process of becoming that. And now it's an invitation to become again something new, something more, something that would allow us to have even more impact. So that's an interesting one. Anything else on this one, Claudette? You're on mute, by the way, just in case you're not aware.
You know, when I was just thinking about change,
Yeah.
something just crossed my mind. Because sometimes the change might not have come to us. It might be the change. It could even be a change in terms of an attitude, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or changing the way somebody used to relate to you.
Uh-huh.
So I was just, and my mind just keeps going back to change in the that sometimes a lot of grief can also be experienced from that loss of or that change in a change in a relationship, not necessarily a bad change, but a change where I think sometimes, right, it all depends on how what you've got invested. If you're talking about another person, what you've got invested
Mm-hmm.
in that person or in that relationship,
Yeah.
and then therefore, when change comes, like what Herbert was saying about the woman never paid a light bill in her life. If the
Yeah.
man dead, if the man dead now, she's gonna have to learn to pay bills, isn't it?
Yeah.
That must be quite frightening for her.
Exactly.
But I
Yeah.
suppose it's the same for other people who say, for example, who's got children, and
Mm,
you separate from your partner, and then you've got the children by yourself, and you're
mm,
parenting by yourself. What
mm.
that must be like,
Yeah.
you know. Sometimes I think about it in terms of women who put up with domestic violence. You
Mm,
know, is it the fact that they can't make, they want to make the change, but they can't make the change because
mm,
of what the investment is in that relationship. That some people stay in places where they shouldn't stay because moving on, letting go, the new identity is too frightening.
yeah. And that's the point I'm making, really, that our minds creates this warning signals when something is unknown and something is yet to be established. And the interesting thing is, whatever we know now was once unknown. We had to
Yes.
adapt to become it. And now, like, life is calling us on the next step of our journey. And again, it's natural to feel that apprehension.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But the question is, the invitation is, okay, can you begin to let go gently and slowly to make possibility for something new and not to allow the mind to frame it as everything unknown is bad? Because often it's an opportunity for growth.
yeah,
I'm conscious that we want one piece to cover. This is the piece I promised you at the beginning. This is the piece that came from that session from Kim Morgan that I was talking about. And this is a summary of what she said. And this will give us a roadmap of some of the things we're going to cover. Some of it we've talked about today already, some will come in the future. It's called Grief Walk. Grief rarely walks a straight line, etching out its own squiggly path, encroaching on every human's experience, bearing its own unique fingerprint, defying every attempt to enlist it in a senseless hierarchy. fit it in a convenient time box, or drown its voice in a hum of distraction. As it yearns to be heard, aches to be seen, seeking space to breathe, transforming purpose into pain, while finding a way to be in your evolving identity. Actually, I just realized there's an error in that. It should be pain into purpose, not purpose into pain. Okay, let's correct that, and then I'll read it again. Okay, so this is called grief walk. Grief rarely walks a straight line, etching out its own squiggly path, encroaching on every human's experience, bearing its own unique fingerprint. Define every attempt to enlist it in a senseless hierarchy. Fit it into a convenient time box. Drown its voice in a hum of distraction. As it yearns to be heard, aches to be seen, seeking space to breathe, transforming pain into purpose, while finding a way to be in your evolving identity. What are you hearing?
I like the title Grief Walk
What is it that you like about it?
because to me it's like saying grief expression.
I like it. Yeah.
And it expresses itself in so many different ways at different times in our lives, at different points of the day.
Mm.
I mean, I can give an example. I mean, sadly, only 2 weeks ago, just after Christmas, we have a Caribbean shop that's not far from where I live now. It's Caribbean food. It's the first Caribbean food shop up from where I live. And I got to know the person who ran the shop, and he really cooked nice, lovely person, but he was very, very stressed, very
Mm-hmm.
stressed. So he decided he was going to give up the shop and he's going to go back to cooking at home and getting the orders and driving out and doing deliveries. He's going to go back to take the pressure off himself. And after Christmas, I saw him and he was telling me he's put that plan into place now. So
Mm.
he's given up the shop and everything. So he won't be opening back in the new year. And that's what he's going to be doing. Do you know, about 2 weeks after that,
Mm-hmm.
I got a call from my sister to say that he collapsed in his house and died.
Oh,
Mm.
so sad to
And
hear.
I really find it so, so, so sad. Yesterday, I had to go past the shop. I was on the bus and
Mm.
was literally fighting back tears. And I'm on the bus and I was literally just fighting back the tears. And it's not as if I had some big, wonderful relationship with this person, but this person, right? Well, he was a Jamaican for a start. So
Mm-hmm.
I have that connection with him.
Connections, yeah.
He can really cook, Ian. He can cook.
Mm.
So I love the food, that's
Yeah.
another
Mm.
thing as well. But he
Mm.
was such a nice person. Me and him used to end up talking. And I used to always be saying, Franklin, you know, you have to step back, you have to get more support. And if you're not getting the support, you really have to cut back on because he
Yeah.
was always stressed, doing too much things. And I just think I just felt a bit sad that the time that he was now putting things in
Mhm.
place to step back,
Yeah.
Mm.
So,
he didn't even live to see what
God.
difference that was going to make.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
no,
I really felt it yesterday as I went past the shop. Every time he comes into my mind, I
mm,
just say his name and I just say, how could it just be? That's like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
unexpected death, unexpected loss. And I
yeah.
just think I think I've only just last year I lost two good friends. I lost Maxine
Mm,
and I lost my friend Zanaba, who got buried at whose funeral was at our
Yeah.
church in
mm,
December in
Mhm.
no, December.
mm,
And I thought two good friends and now somebody else that I know. And I think, oh, how much grief am I gonna be having to cope with all these different people, and
Yeah.
and all three of these losses have been all been to me unexpected. Then there's not
Mm.
something I was expecting to happen to those people.
Yeah.
And I tell you what it triggered in me the other day. It made me quite tearful because I was thinking, because when you have a stroke,
Mm.
your chances of having a second stroke is quite high,
Mm-hmm.
especially if they're not sure about what caused the stroke or whatever. That's why you have to certain things you really have to keep on track with.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
And it made me think to myself, oh my God, you know, if they can just go like that and they didn't have anything major, it wasn't anything majorly wrong with them or anything like that. I was
Mm.
thinking, well, what if I just had another stroke and this time didn't make it out?
I
Mm.
hear you. Mm-hmm.
And it just made me feel, I suppose I question my own
Mm.
mortality, I suppose.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear that. I hear that.
Yeah, it's quite sad, but I mean, what can I say? I have to deal with it, innit?
Mm.
So every time I go up to the shop to do the window dressing, I have to go past
Yeah.
where this man's shop used to be.
Mm.
Mm.
And when everybody's saying, "Oh, what are we going to go and get for lunch now?"
Mm.
I can't open my mouth and say, "Well, I don't want no chicken and chips. I don't want none of that
Yeah.
food. Me know
Yeah.
where me going to get food
Yeah.
from, and I
Right.
got this thing."
Right.
And I'm going to pick up my phone and say, "Franklin, I want some ackee and saltfish." No,
Yeah.
Franklin, I just want the saltfish and the cabbage. I don't
Yeah.
want nothing. And he would
That's it.
tailor make the food to what I
Wow.
want.
Mm.
Yeah. No, I hear
And
that.
tell me when you're going home, knock, call me, and I will have it ready for you to take home. And
Indeed.
that's you build a relationship with
Yeah.
somebody, and then that's all gone
Mm.
Right.
unexpectedly.
Powerful. And that is what we were talking about earlier, is this idea that the impact of something on you.
Yeah,
Is it something you're expecting, you've been able to prepare for? Also, what's the connection you have to that person? What is
Mm.
the thing that is connecting you to that person, and what's going to happen to that? So that evolution, coming to terms with that, is all what grief process is about. You
yeah,
know, and then also not stifling, allowing it to be, because it's telling you the other part of this framework is this idea of integrating the wisdom that you gain from the experience of grief.
Mhm.
So what
yeah,
you've already told us is that, oh, now I know why I feel this way about this person.
Mhm.
These are all the things I appreciate about this person when they were around, and that
Mhm.
is why I'm feeling this way about them no longer being around. And it'll take me
yeah,
time to get
Mhm.
to terms and become used to the fact that they're no longer around. But
yeah,
also the aim is not to forget them completely,
Mhm.
but to
Yeah.
yeah,
relate to them in a new way,
Yeah.
on
yeah,
the reality that they're no longer here in that form, but
Yeah.
actually they're going to
yeah,
be with you in a different form.
Different form.
That you're
Yes.
carrying them in your memories.
Mhm. Mhm.
You can no longer access them. So, like you say, you
Mhm.
can't make those phone calls now. It can't
Mhm.
happen anymore. But you can
Mhm.
live in the memory of the fact that, oh, what a wonderful person that was,
Yes.
who treated me this way and gave me these opportunities. And the part beyond that, where you transform that pain into purpose, is what can I learn from my life? Or if that person
yeah,
made me feel that way
Mhm.
in any area of service that I'm in, how can I make someone else feel that way? How
Mhm.
do I need to show up? So that's where we then transform what
yeah,
is painful into something
Mhm.
productive.
yeah.
Mhm.
Wow. Do you have anything quickly? I know we're almost out of time. We're out of time, but
Two quick things.
yeah, go on, go
The
on, go on.
first one is based on what you just said,
Mm-hmm.
just one word, legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Because right away, I have never met the man, but I'm hearing the legacy that he has left.
Yeah.
And the second thing is the way a part of the poem, I just got a call that I had to take, but a part of the poem spoke
Mm-hmm.
about almost persons ignoring the grief, or one of the ways of dealing with grief is whether smoking or drinking or just taking themselves outside of the framework of what's happening
Mm-hmm.
just to get an ease. It is what it is.
Yeah, that's drowning its voice in a hum of distraction, and that's there because we'll do a whole section on the ways in which people numb the pain, and
Yes.
whether that's an effective way of dealing with grief and what you can do instead. So again, today's really about setting out our stall and going, look, these are all the things that are to come in this series, and if people want to experience that, then they can join us, because it clearly is a journey that is necessary, just based
Yes.
on everybody being able to relate to it. And even though you know someone's decided not to come on screen, but she shared things earlier about the fact that, yeah, that new chapter, embracing the new chapter, is an important piece. So thank you everyone who was part of this, whether you're able to speak or not, and to you both for your contribution. It's been brilliant. So quickly, Claudette, what's the big thing you're taking away from today?
I'm glad I'm part of the journey.
So are we. You, Herbert, what are you taking away? What's really landed for you today?
Just opening and peeling back this particular topic that very few people actually talk about, and
Mm.
really just seeing the insights and just an excitement about what is to come, really.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just as excited because I've got my own grieving as well, so it's an interesting one. Oh, thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy
Thank
the rest
you.
of your
Thank you so much,
weekend.
Frank.
Yeah.
All
You
right,
too.
then.
Thank you
Bye.
very much.